Hey everyone, welcome to our remote workflow webinar. As everyone knows, with the coronavirus outbreak taking over, a lot of people are working from home, and for video professionals, that's going to bring up a lot of challenges and some unique situations that you're going to have to work through to be able to keep your business running during whether we're in a quarantine or long-term shutdown. So I have my tech guys here, and they're going to be talking about some of the challenges you're going to be facing and some options you have to get yourself back up and running during this time. If you have any questions about what's going on, feel free to leave them in the chat below. I'll be monitoring those and bringing those questions up as people have them. So without any further ado, guys, take it from here.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. And just for some quick introductions, my name is Nathaniel Cooper. I'm our Chief Operating Officer, joined today by Matt, who's going to be monitoring questions on the line. So if you want anything answered, just type those over and Matt will check those out. We've got Brian Reisdorf, our head of all things technical, who has been working long hours this weekend to help take care of our customers. We've got Mike Dang, who is our senior support engineer, as well as Taylor Hodgetts, who is a ghost of it today. We're all kind of working with impromptu setups. So
you made it so quick that I didn't even get a chance to grab a webcam. Come on.
There you go. There you go. This is how fast these things are happening. So we wanted to get together and talk to everybody about what we're doing. This information today is for existing platform users. We are not here to sell you anything. We are not here to tell you about, check out this new feature, that new whatever. This is specifically to talk about what we're doing to try to help our customers who are running platform storage, and you may be stuck at home, not able to access your shared storage server. So we're going to talk about specific workflows to work around that. That said, what we are doing is we've kind of, Brian, Mike, Taylor, myself, everybody's kind of talked about, what are the different workflows that people are out there using? And then Brian, what are you doing with that information? What can people expect over the next couple of days from us?
Yeah, so we're looking at, we're looking at these remote workflows that are commonly requested. And we're trying to put together a group of just simple, not at all simple, but straightforward remote workflows that you can implement to kind of get things moving given the current situation. So that ranges from how to treat handling external hard drives, like what the best policies around, moving around external hard drives between, maybe even shipping them to each other, stuff like that. Obviously that's not ideal, but it can happen. And then as well as cloud services, there's a variety of cloud services that you could potentially connect to. And then there's other more complex, but a lot more usable scenarios where you're talking about implementing things like VPNs and potentially even file sync between real-time stuff. So there's a handful of those, but what we're really putting together is a series of knowledge base articles and videos to help implement like the whole range of those. So depending on what's available to you and your location and your facility and your workforce, what makes the most sense, what can you get some mileage with, and how do you get through the next couple of weeks really.
Yeah, so we're packaging those workflows, those knowledge base articles together as best as we can in step-by-step instructions, because just kind of watching what's going on in the market, I keep hearing, people say, oh, just connect over VPN, which is kind of oversimplifying a fairly...
I mean, yes, but how?
Yeah, exactly. We need to fly there. Just go to the airport and jump on an airplane. Well, I don't know if that's realistic right now. So we're going to help you guys as much as possible with the step-by-steps on what is a VPN? How do you set up a VPN on your platform server, that type of stuff. Yeah, Brian.
Oh, I was just going to say, and not everything's related to VPN. That's just one of the solutions, obviously. So, if and some of you guys already have them, we can help you figure out the best way to utilize them in the meantime. So,
absolutely, awesome. So this is an informal chat. We didn't even prep questions for this. We're arguably unprepared. But what we are going to do is we're doing this today because we wanted you, our customers, to know exactly what we're doing right now. And we anticipate a load of knowledge base articles in these how-to videos starting, Brian?
Probably tomorrow. At
Okay.
least the first run of them will probably be tomorrow morning.
Okay, and then likely, we've kind of sectioned this into 4 workflows. I kind of like buckets. So what we're going to do is we've established these 4 workflows. Matt and myself are working on some blog articles on what are the upsides and downsides of each of these 4 workflows, you know, how fast, you know, all that stuff. So we'll have that for you here over the next couple days. That said, let's talk a little bit about some overviews of each of these workflows, exactly what it is, and just so you can start implementing stuff today if possible. So I'm going to start out with what we're calling option 1, which is essentially what we call project checkout, which is a fancy way of saying put it on a damn hard drive and take the hard drive home. So guys, do you mind just talking a little bit about what that option is, what you actually need to do to do that the right way, if there is a right way?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. So there's a couple of things that, you know, obviously the big consideration around this is you want to have some visibility around what's been kind of checked out and what's, you know, offsite and what's going on, because there's no currently there's no very easy way to like bring back a hard drive from an external source and resync it to existing data and have everything kind of materialize back to square one. That said, you know, there are some tools in the platform that can kind of help you do that. You can lock a platform space. So one of the probably more popular ways to do that, or what we're kind of recommending, is, you know, if you've got a project that is a platform space or a section of projects that are a platform space that someone's going to check out, you can simply lock that platform, copy it to a drive, lock that platform space until it comes back in, and whoever's kind of handling the actual like physical ingest of that media can then duplicate that data back over. Because what we really want to prevent in that situation is once the project is checked out, in this particular workflow, there's kind of one instance of the project. Once it's checked out of the server, it's on that external hard drive. Whatever changes happen on that external hard drive need to get pushed back to the server. But what you want to avoid at all costs is having additional changes happen on the server while that project is checked out, because now you've got some conflicts that can potentially happen. You've got, you know, data that's in one place and not in another. And that's where it gets messy very quickly. So, you know, this is by far not, you know, the most eloquent way to, you know, to do this, but it is absolutely the cheapest, and it absolutely is going to get you the most, like the ability to move the most data the fastest. You know, when we talk about some of these other solutions down the road, you know, one of the overall things is going to be bandwidth. And in this particular solution, you've got, you know, the bandwidth of a USB 3 or Thunderbolt drive at hand, which is pretty large.
Yeah, and I want to chime in here. I shared out my screen. Hopefully you guys are seeing it. Yeah. Excellent. So you can take an external hard drive. USB is probably your best bet because there's just kind of, they're simple, they're dumb, simple storage. You can plug in a USB drive to your platform server. It's got USB 3 ports on it. You probably also have Thunderbolt. And that drive will show up as an external hard drive, as you see here. And then you can go to a platform space. I've got my ProMAX blog here. You can right click and you go to data management to copy that space to external storage. And Brian, to your point, and this is a feature 99% of the time, more often than that, you probably don't even know this feature is here, but to your point, Brian, you can right click, lock that platform space, and now nobody can make any changes to that space until somebody intentionally locks it. It ain't elegant, but in a, you know, immediate panic scenario like this, where it's like, yeah, I copy this project locally, avoid some of those, some of that data and continuity that can happen when if you just copy it and don't think about it. Okay, so I think my my platform's gone there. Let's talk about a second option, Matt, I know you did a video with who's your buddy's name?
Uh, the guy from West Virginia?
The guy from West Virginia, your alter ego. What's his name?
Jordan.
Jordan, yes. If you haven't seen Matt and Jordan's Dropbox implementation video,
Here, put a
check
link to
that
it
out.
I'll put a link to it in the chat.
Well, okay, thank you. We'll link to that in the chat. Brian, talk to us about option 2 a little bit, which is, Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive sync to a platform space.
Yeah, these are kind of the mid-range that honestly, these are worth setting up regardless of the situation because they're useful, pretty much all around. But you can pretty easily set up Dropbox, Dropbox Teams, or I think the Dropbox Pro, if they call it, and Dropbox for Business, excuse me. And yeah, OneDrive and Google Drive as well. You can actually create a platform space that is in effect a Dropbox Drive. Currently, the best way to do it, I mean, from a OneDrive perspective, I was setting this up yesterday on a test server. You literally just start OneDrive on the server system itself and place the actual OneDrive physical location of the drive on the storage group and add it as a platform space. And from that point forward, anything that's added to that particular platform space gets uploaded to OneDrive. If you've got access to that on your mobile device or whatever, your laptop at home, you've got access to that. So it's not a full server remote access. You're basically talking about being able to access the contents of one platform space, as kind of a mailbox, if you will, like somebody who's on the server can move something into that space and then it will propagate to, your whole Dropbox team or your OneDrive folder. So it's not a wide solution. And the other component that you've got to take into account here, I mentioned this before, bandwidth is obviously at play here. So moving terabytes of data is generally not in the cards. What we're really talking about doing here is moving potential deliverable previews and things like that people can do review and approval for, or project files or small graphics from your After Effects team so that you guys can continue to integrate into projects when we're working remotely. The other thing to consider too is a lot of those services, all those services have some kind of data caps. So, you can, if you start transferring raw media, it will slowly upload and you can tap out your Dropbox pretty quick doing that. So it is something, again, it's not fire and forget. Like you're going to have to manage it to some degree, but there is, the ability to basically sync those up very, very quickly. Like I said, setting up OneDrive, setting up Dropbox, it's about a 15-minute ordeal in most cases. You guys probably get a lot of mileage out of the knowledge base articles and videos. You'll be able to connect any or all three of those, frankly, pretty quick. So that's the general. Yeah, Google Drive. I saw that Google Drive will be. It is one that we're posting specifically a video and document on that likely tomorrow.
And I'm checking my own work here, our own work here. If you go to our website and go to support, so we're putting up knowledge base articles on Google Drive and OneDrive. The Dropbox one is already up.
Yeah, the Dropbox one is there, and I'll tell you, the methodology behind OneDrive and Google Drive is not far off from Dropbox. If you browse through that one, you're going to be able to figure it out.
So if you go to promax.com, go to support, and then in the searchable database, just type Dropbox, you will find the article we're talking about. In fact, yeah, I'll link to that one here in the chat as well. And Brian, correct me if I'm wrong on this one. So, this is, you mentioned this is, this syncs a space, right? This doesn't sync your whole server. And where this is different than some of what we're going to get into in the next two workflows, which kind of revolve around VPNs. And we'll talk about what exactly that is. Where this differentiates is you're not actually accessing the platform per se. You're creating a synced folder that you can access from home through your OneDrive Dropbox account that is syncing on your platform space. So in a lot of ways, you're not actually accessing your platform at all at that point.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Like you are transferring, and this is where the efficiencies come in too. You're transferring that data to a third-party server somewhere. And when you download that, regardless of where you are in the world, you're coming from a third-party server. So there are some speed benefits to that because of some technical limitations around things like the VPN that we'll talk about in a minute. But overall, the real limiter here is anything that you kind of put into this pipeline is going to those third-party servers, and you're likely going to pay for that storage. So we work in terabytes, and terabytes, unfortunately, in regards to cloud, it's still pretty ugly. If you can figure out a reasonable way to, this is where, not to go off on a small tangent, but if this is where, if you kind of merge a couple of these workflows, so that first workflow where you're potentially checking out a hard drive, if you are sending footage via hard drive and the bulk of that is moving quickly, and then projects and things are happening through the sync, that's a much more tenable workflow. Again, it requires some management, it requires some time and some forethought. And we're going to try and provide as much of that as we can provide to you guys, but all of you work differently. If you've ever done a workflow training with me, I tell you, every workflow is different. So we can get it close, but you guys are going to have to take it the last mile there to figure out what exactly works for your team.
Cool. One question, and then let's jump into some of the last two workflows, because I do want to keep things moving. Question from Corey. Not sure if you're going to get to it, but we're implementing Dropbox Sync with a program called GoodSync. We can sync individual platform spaces to our Dropbox to keep changes on all edit machines at editor's home. Synced to the platform spaces equals spaces synced. Much better implementation than Dropbox's own app.
Yeah, GoodSync is awesome. It is expensive. That is probably the downside. I think a server license for that is 4 digits. So it's not a small deal. That said, combined with a solid VPN infrastructure, something like that is an absolutely valid solution. And some of the things that we're going to talk about here emulate that. There you go, 30-day trial. Some of the stuff that we're going to talk about emulates that to some degree, and obviously, as we get into the further workflows, these are phase ones of this stuff. We intend to keep it rolling and improve on it as we go here. But obviously, this has kind of been thrust to the forefront of our development queue. So, yeah, we'll talk about more of that in a minute. So, but yeah, that's a totally valid solution. And if it wasn't for the price attached to it, it's a good one.
Pardon my ignorance, but Brian, what's the difference between having GoodSync to sync your Dropbox spaces and not?
So it's just the way that it manages it, frankly. So you can the real difference here is that without direct Dropbox API integration, doing more than one space at a time is troublesome. Okay. And maybe I'm understanding Corey wrong here, but if you are syncing multiple platform spaces to Dropbox, again, you've potentially got bandwidth and data cap issues. So you want to be super careful. You don't want to inadvertently blast 50 terabytes up to Dropbox because they're going to love you for it, but you're not going to love the bill that arrives next month.
I am, just for reference, looking at Dropbox's pricing. I don't know how generous it is, but their advanced users are $20 a month, minimum requirement of 3, so $60 per month, and that does say as much space as your team needs. Okay. I don't know if they still that when you've got 150 terabytes on it.
I'd be willing to bet there's some fine print in there somewhere. I could be wrong, and I hope I am. But that said, I will, just to continue very quickly, I do think, and Corey can throw in and correct me where I'm wrong here, but the real benefit of that kind of workflow is to, if you do have a VPN and you are syncing, or providing those syncs to local or or to workstations across the VPN, you have a kind of Dropbox-like environment where you are in effect using the platform as kind of your storage and then pulling across what you need, or syncing what you need, you know, in a not real time, but close to real time kind of situation, to local workstations and local storage so that you guys can work and then it syncs back. That's kind of like a private cloud solution, which is frankly a good way to go. And it's solely gated by, you know, VPN speeds and connectivity speeds. So
sorry to pause you there. I think we're getting into the next solution. So far, you know, we've talked about this ability to, you know, let's just call it what it is. You're copying the data to an external hard drive, and then lock that space so you don't accidentally update both of them. That's option one. Mm-hmm. Option two is using a Dropbox, a Google Drive, a OneDrive to sync individual platform spaces, or as Corey pointed out, you can also use a third-party tool like, I've already forgotten the name of it. I'm sorry. GoodSync. There you go. Like GoodSync to make that even better. 30-day free trial, apparently. There you go. Let's talk about option three, which is just simply, you've got a platform, you're turning on a VPN. Brian, you know, Mike, talk to us about what is a VPN? What does this actually look like? What do you have to do and what are the upsides and downsides of it?
Yeah, so I mean, the short version, I mean, we've probably all heard of VPNs in passing if you don't have experience with one, but it stands for Virtual Private Network. It is, in effect, it's a pipeline of encryption through the internet that connects you to a local network somewhere else, usually in your office or your building. When you turn on that function, like on your laptop or whatever, you hit the little VPN button, the connection is made, you're authenticated, everything is good. And then you can start hitting resources that you would hit as if you were sitting at your desk in the building. It's a really powerful tool largely because of the workflow it provides, because once it's enabled, everything is transparent. You're just still sending data back and forth, just like you'd be sitting, you know, at your office. Luckily for us, that translates directly to exactly how the platform works. If you can access the platform from your office, if you have a VPN that is going into that same network, you can enable the VPN and you can pull and move data through the network, through the internet, exactly like you'd be if you were sitting at your office. The downsides to that, though, there is a lot of encryption that's happening. There's a lot of encapsulation because of the way that the data moves and has to move through the internet. There's some latency involved. So you're not going to be able to do something as awesome as like open up Premiere and start editing using the footage that's you know, at the office. I'll temper that. You can do it, you won't like it. And even with proxies, it's gonna be ugly. You know, you guys are used to, if you're an editor who's really, you know, got a high turn rate, or really if you're an editor who's been doing any amount of professional work, you will notice the latencies and the lag and the things like that are occurring, and it will infuriate you. But you can use a VPN in a pinch, you know, like we're in now. You can use a VPN to pull over some local data. You can use it to transfer small amounts of data. I mean, our project files that we work on, I mean, how often are you really working on a Premiere project that's over 100 megabytes? It's fairly rare for most of us. 100 megabytes in today's terms across the internet, you know, if you're on an ugly connection, a few minutes. So one thing I will point out about VPNs, though, even though you have, you know, at home, you might have gigabit internet or something, VPNs still pretty wildly restrict bandwidth. Most VPNs, outside of some very high end, you know, like you get into the crazy 5-digit Cisco router kind of systems, most VPNs move sub 5 megabytes a second. In most cases, it's around the 2 to 3 megabyte a second mark. So it's in our world, that is pretty ugly. So the benefit here, obviously, you've got this transparent, super easy, super clean workflow. It doesn't change from how you're used to working. The downside is the bandwidth is bad, you know, for what we do and for footage. So if you can account for footage Again, going back to like checking out a hard drive with footage, something like that, having it sent to you and then just sending back project files, updates, graphics, things like that. Those smaller things are absolutely tenable to send back and forth on a VPN. When you get into, full res footage, not so much.
To put that in some, transfer terms, because, VPN is a frustrating thing to me, because it's like, so it makes it feel like you're there, but you're not. And excuse me. So at 2 megabytes per second, if you're using a VPN that's not an enterprise class VPN and you do have those limits, even just transferring data at 2 megabytes per second, you're looking at about 170 gigs per day.
Yeah.
So, although, and it's funny because I'll use a VPN, like I do, demos for prospective clients on a VPN all the time. That's no big deal, because all I'm doing is clicking through our interface, searching proxies, setting up backups, restoring stuff, all of that stuff. I'm just controlling that local asset. But to actually use this workflow to like copy data over is pretty untenable in most cases.
It's rough. Yeah. It's great in a pinch, and it's great if you're traveling. You can set up laptops to connect on VPNs. I can't tell you the number of times that I've connected in an airport, been able to pull down files that I needed or something. So there's a lot of benefit to it. And again, in a pinch, it doesn't hurt. The other thing that's nice about this in our workflows is it's very easy to take and copy like 5 hard drives of the same raw footage, send them to the editors, and each editor can do their own thing with the raw footage depending on the project at hand, right? Like raw footage is not something that is going to change. So writing it to a drive, it doesn't matter so much. The control of that, it matters a lot less than the control of like project files and graphics and the actual end product. And if that stuff is being synced, then you're in a good place. Raw media is huge, but luckily, once it's captured, it largely doesn't change. So.
Cool. Well, let's round this out with the fourth and final kind of workflow that we're going to be, documenting and presenting over the course of the next few days, which is a VPN plus having a local server. Some of you may or may not know, we've got the Media Hub. It's a small, lower cost server. You can actually combine those. So Brian, talk to us about that workflow, what that looks like. And I'll temper this with, this is, right now in this moment, it's likely too late for that, right? Like, I mean, you can order one. We're genuinely not trying to like sell these right now or anything, but introduce you to the workflow possibility. But talk to us about what that workflow is, Brian, how that differs from just having a VPN.
Yeah, so, the downside of the VPN, there's a few. Obviously, the speed set and the speed factor, but the other factor is just the setup and configuration. Generally, you kind of fall directly into one of two camps. You've either got no real IT assets to speak of, and you're kind of using the Linksys router or a fairly inexpensive router and just rocking and rolling, or you do have some kind of IT group. Now, if you're in the former group, what we're trying to do, and a lot of our clients are, they don't have dedicated IT teams. If you're in the former group, what we're trying to do is basically set up where you can take a Media Hub, you can link it to your primary server via kind of a VPN that we're building into the system. And at that point, what happens is basically a real-time sync between chosen data on the server and the Media Hub. Now, you are moving at VPN speeds. However, that again, when we're talking about full res media, like the raw footage, that data, because it's a real-time sync, it's an always connected thing. It's always being transferred. It's always being updated. Once the main footage is transferred over, which you can also do by sending a hard drive, if you've got 10 terabytes of data, plug it into the Media Hub, dump it. At that point, you work from the media hub locally, like you plug your home workstation into it. You work from the SSDs in the media hub, and you work just like you would on the platform system. The only difference is every change that you're making to the drive is getting pushed to your primary platform system. And potentially, you know, if you've got somebody else who's working, who's got a media hub in their home office or their facility, that data is being synced across to them as well. So, pardon me, all of those locations are syncing together. That's what we're looking at right now. Obviously, you know, this is something that is still it's been fleshed out. It's still in active development at the moment. We're looking to have some passes on it very, very quickly here, but the nuts and bolts are all in place to get this moving. Yeah, so that's what we're looking at right now. It's a bit of a hybrid of kind of all three. Excuse me.
And I think that workflow is, you know, we most want to make sure that, you know, if you're at home right now and or going to be there for the next, you know, 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks, whatever that time is, that's probably not realistic to get that up and running. So these other workflows are things you should probably be more focused on. That said, one question I had, Brian, that we really haven't discussed, I'm curious your thoughts on it. Obviously we can make proxies with the platform. How do proxies work within this whole conversation? What's their role there?
So there's a couple of ways to do that. Like in our system, proxies are largely kind of preview files, usually based around like the archive situation, being able to preview offline media. You can turn the proxies into like higher res media, higher bitrate media to use in editing. You can make some higher bitrate H.264s, things like that. You can even turn it into ProRes if you want to. The real benefit obviously is, you know, across some higher end VPNs, you potentially could do an ugly proxy edit in real time if you really wanted to. That said, if you were to transfer the proxies and just work on the proxies, that could be a much, you know, a savings in bandwidth and time as well if you're across a VPN or something. It's a balance. It's all a balance. Proxies, you know, the real reason proxies exist is to cut in real time when real time is not possible. You know, there's a lot of complexity to proxies and done right. If you are just now contemplating starting a proxy workflow to deal with this, you are going to burn probably more time dealing with that than you will fighting against whatever bandwidth, you know, situation that you've got to work against. Okay. You know, because when it comes time to kind of reconcile everything at the end and get everybody on the same page, it's going to be tough. There's no joke. Yeah, proxies, there's a reason that everybody, like Final Cut 7 came around and everybody was able to, you know, cut HD in real time and everything. There's a reason that proxies went by the wayside as fast as they possibly could. And, you know, they're really only just now starting to work their way back, partially because of bandwidth, but also because, you know, you've got these big crazy 5K, 6K, 8K cameras out there. And sometimes you need to do that. And you don't have any other option.
Fair enough. You might even be mad at me for this, Brian. I'm not sure. Always making you nervous when I say stuff like that. I do think, you know, as people, you know, because again, as you pointed out, everybody's workflow and needs are different.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of very smart, very savvy customers that are here on this webinar today. If you don't know about it, like Brian said, our system is creating proxies for the purpose of previewing offline media. That's why we create proxies, so that you can search through your platform, preview stuff. When you archive it to cloud, to LTO, you can still play it back. That said, a somewhat niche, little known feature is in the admin tool set. I can already hear you mad at me about this, Brian.
No, yeah.
There is an option within platform spaces called enable mounting proxies. And what that will do is if you have a platform space that has proxies enabled, and perhaps I should take a step back here, I'll go to our blog space. this blog space that I work off of and Matt works off of, and we do some of our blogs on, this actually does not have proxies enabled. If you have a space, first you have to enable proxies by checking that box. And if that is enabled and you have enable mount proxies, when you mount a space, it will actually mount 2 spaces. It will mount your actual space as well as the proxies of that space as a separate folder. So if you need to be testing out workflows and do want to try to mess around with that, our proxies are very low res. It's like 200 kilobit per second stuff. It looks like a video game from the 80s. But again, that's because it's only to preview for offline media. But I do want to just make sure that everybody knows that feature, that function is there.
Yeah, yeah.
That's something we usually even talk about or show people.
It's the only thing that I would caution around that, and the only hesitation I have at all around that is if you get into that, you are going to go down a rabbit hole of proxy insanity, and if you can work your way out the other side, it might be very useful to you. That said, you're going to get into bandwidth, you're going to get into proxy. There's a lot of little nuances in there, and we can help you work with that if that is something you guys want to do. You can reach out and we can kind of point you in the right direction.
Awesome. Thank you. So just to recap it, I know some people joined a little bit late, but right now what our goal here at ProMAX is to take some various workflows that we've established just individually with a lot of you, document those and put those in a cohesive spot so that you can review those options with your team. We've boiled it down to really 4 recommended workflows. Essentially a local drive, external drive checkout of projects, a Dropbox, option 2 would be like a Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive sync. Option 3 would be enable a VPN, and then option 4, get real fancy, have a VPN with an external server that's syncing between multiple servers. All of those which you can do over the course of the next 2 days. Tomorrow, Wednesday, we're going to have all of these options in a blog so that from a business perspective, you can say, here's the upsides and downsides to each of these. But then much more importantly, knowledge-based articles and videos on, hey, you've got OneDrive, you've got a platform, here's how you set that up. Yeah. So we'll be rolling those out here over the next day or 2 for those that need that.
And one thing that I'll throw out there, if you are in a situation where you have any kind of corporate IT or IT support that you lean on, if they haven't spoken to you about VPN access through however you're set up yet, start the conversation with them, because I guarantee you they've had it a million times since last week. Because if there is an avenue that you can get VPN into the platform system and into your local network, start that process now, because I will tell you, with most IT groups, it is not a short process. It will take some red tape in whatever company that you're with, especially larger ones, to get that moving. I would be pretty shocked if that wasn't already in place for most of you, or at least in progress. But if it hasn't crossed your desk yet, take it to them, because now's the time.
And kind of an exciting thing for me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, and I apologize, everybody. We've been working literally over the weekend. Like, we're trying to get this stuff out fast for you. Like, don't call us with support calls on Friday, because we're all going to be asleep. We are going to have an article that, although there are some big downsides to a VPN setup, we're going to have a workflow where if you're a advertising agency, a little video marketing agency with 2 or 3 people, and you don't even know what VPN means, we're going to have an article that shows you how to get this set up on your platform, no costs, no charge. Like, we're going to have that information available.
Yeah. Yeah. it's one particular type of VPN solution. And look, I'll be the first. I won't be the first to say, but I'll say it a million times. There's a lot of different ways that this solution kind of works. This one solution that we're talking about is a fairly easy to access, relatively easy to set up kind of VPN solution. It is not necessarily the fastest, but it will give you access. And we're going to put that out there. I will tell you right now, if you have any amount of IT control in your network, you will probably not be able to use this. However, if you've got IT control in your network, they should have some angle on VPN access. Whoever's got that control should be taking that on themselves. So for those of you that don't have an IT team, this could be potentially very useful in the short term here.
I just saw a note. The issue is getting my team to upgrade Dropbox, their internet speed, and to stop using their wife's school's Adobe account. We can't help with any of that. There are unique challenges for all of us.
Yeah. Working from home is it's a challenge in and of itself for a lot of folks. So,
yeah. Awesome. Well, Matt.
We got a couple questions that came in. So first off, let's start with a question from Patrick. Will there be knowledge base articles for Box cloud service? It's similar to Dropbox.
Yeah, we have not specifically looked into Box. That said, this is probably very much one of those situations where I would say look at the Dropbox article. And the idea of what we've done with that is probably easily replicatable with what they've got. None of what we've talked about is like a direct service level integration. So that the complexity of these solutions is pretty low, honestly, which makes them very easily transferable to other similar cloud providers. So regardless of your cloud provider, take a look at the Dropbox article, like literally just like tonight. And you will probably be able to replicate something very similar.
Great. Cool. All right. And then the next question, is there a solution for remote editors to access a ProMAX system client or otherwise using a protocol that involves remote controlling, similar to TeamViewer or Microsoft Teams, but something that includes device audio playback and color fidelity for video editing?
That is the holy grail. There is no bulletproof way to do that. There are services that will provide things like that, but there are caveats all over the place as to how that works, how you get footage there, but to do it into your own system, there is one particular group of products that I would mention here is Teradici. They do what's called, it's basically video over IP, but it's specifically they're kind of geared towards low latency stuff like that. That said, you've only got control over that stuff, from the server to the outbound point of that network, and then the inbound point of your network to your workstation. Beyond that huge gap in the middle, that's the internet, and there's latency, there's, bandwidth restrictions that are going to be in place there. There's the company that figures that out, without any compromises or anything that's the big one. Teradici, go ahead.
Let's put it this way. Avid hasn't figured it out yet.
Nobody has. Adobe, there's a lot of different ways to kind of get, 25% there in some cases, but you're always going to sacrifice the other 75% of something. Especially when you get into, especially when you get into things as deep as color fidelity and, 8-channel sound and stuff like that. You're now talking about a lot of bandwidth, and then you're talking about responsiveness, and you're not even talking about how you get the raw media there if it's a service that you're using, stuff like that. There's a lot there, but yeah, unfortunately, there's no easy answer on that one.
All right, and the last question was, will there be a replay of this webinar? Absolutely. There will be a recording of this that will be available as soon as that link is available to us. You'll be able to access it directly from the homepage. There's two buttons there. one that'll take you to a replay of this, and another that will take you to live updates and all the resources we're putting together. So yeah, just feel free to check there, and that'll be up there as soon as possible.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody for doing this, and you know, stay safe and do your thing, and we'll give you as much info on this stuff as we possibly can in the future.
All right, take care.
All right, wash those hands.